to freeze. So, if you have a bag of Skittles, you don't want to necessarily break your teeth on. It's probably best to do gels. But those can freeze too, but those are easy to squeeze out. So, whether it's, if you like fruit snacks or fruit roll-ups, those are good. A juice box. And then I like to, again, I like to follow it up with some sort of a complex carbohydrate so it just doesn't hit me all at once. It kind of breaks down that process. And then one thing I wanted to also tell was that I've had days where like I said, where my diabetes just didn't allow me to function at my highest capacity. And on those days, like whether it's a competition, I set out my goal to just go out and beat my diabetes for that day. I know I'm not going to get first place or maybe even podium at that competition, but unlike the other athletes, I have another challenge that I need to deal with. And so my personal goal then becomes to beat my diabetes on that day, to show it that I can get control over it and that I can still do my activity, whether that's last place or first place, I don't care, as long as I'm out there beating my diabetes.
Any more questions? I'll come to you in a minute.
So are you doing any more camps this year in Utah?
Not this year in Utah. We have one coming up in Colorado at Copper Mountain next month, and then in Oregon, and then we head down to the Southern Hemisphere for the summertime for camps down there. But next year we'll probably be doing another camp. We will be doing another camp in Utah, especially since my home base now is in central Utah, and that will be probably at the canyons or in the Park City area.
How do you avoid dropping low on like a low blood sugar when you're like lifting or running or working out or doing like not necessarily snowboarding, but just doing other cross training stuff like that?
So the question was how do I avoid lows when I'm doing cross train activities? That's a good question. Actually, I tend to have a lot more of my lows when I'm doing cross training, such as lifting weights, and that's just something that, I'm more used to the snowboarding element aside, but whenever I'm doing dry land in the fall or in the spring, that is a problem that I encounter. And it comes down to really just checking. I know I got to check more when I'm doing those sorts of activities, and then I always just have some sort of backup carbohydrate on hand. And another important thing too is that whether it was my coaches on various teams that I've been on, I've always had to educate my friends, my family, my coaches about the disease. Because I'm not going to go out and do an activity by myself usually. And it's important that everyone knows the signs of a low blood sugar, a high blood sugar, and what to do in certain situations. I've had times where I was hiking in the backcountry where I didn't feel a low blood sugar, and I stopped, I felt it, I went to check my blood sugars, and my meter read LO, so it didn't even give me a reading, which meant I was under 21. And luckily, my friends that were with me knew what to do, and we were able to just pound honey down my mouth and get me back up. But again, whenever I'm doing other activities outside of my sport, since that is still sort of foreign for me, I am constantly checking still, and giving myself carbs when I need it, or giving myself insulin when I need it as well.
On a typical day, how often do you check your blood? And on an exercise day, how much do you check your blood? And on a competition day, so how many times a day?
On average, I test myself about 12 times a day. When I'm snowboarding now, I still test around that amount of time. However, I'll focus more on after exercise due to post-exercise hypoglycemia, and especially when I'm in a new area. When I was competing, when I would travel to a competition, I used to have many competitions in Washington State, and I would get there about a week ahead of time, and I would check my sugars every 2 hours throughout the day and the night, and I would record it. So by the time my competition day came up, I knew exactly, like the night before, how to set my basal rates on my insulin and just run perfect sugars, allow my body to be completely normal compared to another athlete. So on average, I test myself about 12 times a day, and I've tested myself above 16 times a day too. In Antarctica, I tested myself plenty more than that. I came with huge amounts of test strips for such a place like that. And then I created a set of games and songs that I would play while I was hiking in Antarctica. What I would do, sorry.
Compliment the presentation by today's speakers, so be sure to visit and spend a few minutes browsing the books.
What I would do is while I was hiking with my team members was I would sing basic songs like the alphabet or a counting numbers game. And let's say if I was singing 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., and I got to 20, but I don't remember what comes after the number 20, or I stutter over to number 21, then my team members would know to stop, let's check my blood sugar, and that was a way to help prevent any hypoglycemia unawareness during exercise for me in that sort of environment. So I've created a lot of different games for different activities, but really when it comes to my sports, on a typical day, test about 12 times a day, but I'm usually exercising every day too, so that's why it's a high amount too. And another thing I would like to say is I do see an advantage over my other competitors with my diabetes in the fact that I can actually feel what foods do to my body. My competitors can't feel what a cheeseburger does to them at lunch before they get out on the hill. I can feel what a little candy does as well, as far as either making me tired or boosting my sugars too high. And I try to see that as an advantage that my competitors don't have for whenever I'm in a competitive situation.
Any other questions?
Please be sure to complete our survey on your walk out today. We want you to know what you thought of the Diabetes Expo.
I was just wondering what kind of pump you use and what you liked about it, and if you've tried more than one kind of pump, which one you like the best and why.
Currently, I'm on the Omnipod system, and I've tried other pumps. What I like about the Omnipod pump is that it's tubeless, and in my environment, it's where I can be at risk for my tubing freezing. I don't have to worry about that. And it's nice to be able to, even when I'm just sleeping at home and rolling around in the bed, that I don't have to get tangled up in tubing. But what I would like to stress is, again, there's various pump companies out there, and what works best for me not necessarily works best for everyone. And I know a lot of the companies will allow you to demo pump, so that's what I did, and I found a system that worked best for what I do and how I live my life.
Okay. Any others? Any other questions? Okay, another round of applause for Sean. Thank you, Sean.